In the far reaches of a dust-colored village where the air always seemed thirsty and the wind carried the taste of cracked clay, 14-year-old Tari lived in a hut with her stepfather, Pajoro, and a goat named Ngozi. The village was a collection of sun-baked huts and stubborn thorn trees that creaked with every gust of wind. The river had long since receded, and the soil remembered rain only in dreams. Tari's feet were always coated in dust, her arms strong from fetching water from miles away, and her heart quieter than most her age. Grief had hollowed out a corner of her chest and filled it with the memory of her mother, whose laughter used to live inside their walls like sunlight. After her mother died 2 harvests ago, Pajoro hardened like old bread. He rarely spoke except to scold, and when he did speak, his words scraped like stone. His affections turned toward an unexpected creature, a goat named Ngozi, gifted to him by a traveling cousin who said she was blessed by the spirits. Ngozi had silver eyes that didn't blink much, and a silence that unnerved the villagers, who often avoided her gaze. Pajoro, however, adored her. He built her a shade hut from palm leaves, brushed her fur daily with a carved stick, and fed her the softest portions of yam. That evening, Tari returned home with sore shoulders and a small bundle of firewood strapped to her back. The sun was bowing out behind the hills, leaving the sky painted in the color of ashes. She had spent the day washing the priestess's laundry by the river and carrying water for the healer's pots, earning only a few roasted groundnuts and some boiled yam in return. It wasn't much, but it was warm and she had carried it home like treasure. Inside the hut, Pajoro was seated on his mat, legs stretched out, cleaning Ngozi's hooves with more care than he ever showed Tari. His eyes flicked to her bundle and then away. "I brought food," Tari said quietly, setting the steaming bowl down. "We can share it." Pajoro grunted. He didn't thank her. Instead, he scooped a portion of the yam stew with his fingers, chewed without joy, then set the bowl beside Ngozi and said, "Eat, girl. You've earned it." Tari watched, horrified but silent, as Ngozi dipped her muzzle into the bowl. The goat chewed slowly, silver eyes blinking once, then twice. Pajoro chuckled and stroked her back. "This one listens better than you ever have," he said, glancing at Tari. "Maybe it's time I traded daughters." Tari stood still, the sting of humiliation rising up her throat like bile. She clenched her fists at her sides and turned toward her mat without another word. Her stomach ached with hunger, but the deeper ache was not one food could fix. It was the ache of being erased slowly, word by word, gesture by gesture, until even your name felt like something foreign when spoken aloud. Later, she lay under a thatch roof that leaked dust with the slightest breeze. The mat beneath her bones was thin and worn. Her fingers traced the edge of her mother's wrapper, folded neatly under her head as a pillow. Outside, crickets clicked and the wind stirred the palm fronds. She stared at the ceiling, eyes open, and tried to remember the last time someone had called her precious. Sleep came in pieces, broken by memory and longing. But sometime deep into the night, between one heartbeat and the next, Tari heard her mother's voice, not out loud but inside, gentle and certain. Even the silent things have voices. She sat up, eyes wide in the darkness. Her mother's voice had always come with meaning, layered like song. Now, in that hushed hour, those words wrapped around Tari like a second skin. She turned her head toward Ngozi, who lay curled in the corner of the hut, tail twitching, ears alert. The goat's silver eyes caught the moonlight and reflected it back like mirrors. Tari didn't speak. Not yet. But inside, something old and tired began to shift. She pulled the wrapper tighter around her shoulders and lay back down. Outside, the wind carried the faintest hum, like a whisper meant only for those who had been quiet too long. The morning began as it always did in the village of Azaba, with roosters crowing too early, the smell of smoke curling from the first cooking fires, and the sun slipping cautiously over the cracked horizon. But this morning, a murmur passed through the village before most pots had even touched the firestones. Something strange had been seen near the shrine tree. 3 women returning from the river stood at the edge of the square, whispering and clutching their water jars tightly. Behind them, children pointed and giggled nervously. What they saw, and what everyone else soon learned, was that Ngozi, the goat with silver eyes, had been circling the shrine tree at dawn. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Slowly, purposefully, like a ritual. The shrine tree was sacred. It stood at the heart of the village, its bark carved with generations of offerings, cowries, woven cloth, dried herbs, and prayers etched in symbols only the oldest elders still understood. Only the priestess touched it directly, and even then only during the new moon rites. For a goat to approach it, let alone circle it with such intent, stirred unease. Some muttered that it was a bad omen. Others, remembering their grandparents' stories, said such behavior could mean the animal carried a spirit, or worse that it had been chosen as a vessel. When Pajoro was asked, he simply laughed. "She's curious," he said, chewing palm nut with yellowed teeth. "Smarter than any goat you've seen. Maybe smarter than some people too." He shot a glance at Tari when he said it, and she lowered her eyes. But Tari had noticed the change long before the others. Ngozi had always been quiet, but now her silence felt deliberate, watchful. The goat no longer bleated like other animals. She moved like she was listening to something far away, something behind the veil of normal sounds. She followed Tari more closely now, especially when Pajoro raised his voice. Once, when Tari was scrubbing her mother's wrapper in the stream, tears trailing into the water without permission, Ngozi had appeared beside her, dipped a hoof into the stream, and nudged her shoulder with a strange softness. Not the clumsy shove of a goat. A gesture. A question. Tari had looked at her then, really looked. The goat's silver eyes caught the morning light and reflected not just her face, but something older, deeper. Something that didn't belong to this world. "Why are you like this?" Tari whispered. Ngozi blinked once, then turned and began to walk up the path toward the fields, pausing to see if Tari would follow. That night, Tari lay in the hut as Pajoro snored beside the fire, drunk from too much palm wine and yam mash. Ngozi lay near the doorway, breathing slow and steady. The moonlight slid in through the gaps in the wall and landed directly on her eyes. Tari sat up on her mat and studied the goat for a long time. "You're not just a goat, are you?" she whispered. "You understand things. I feel it." Ngozi didn't move. But her ears twitched and one eye opened lazily to meet Tari's. "I don't have anyone else to talk to," she continued. "Mama used to tell me things, stories I've never told anyone. But you listen without interrupting." There was silence. The crackle of an old log in the fire. Somewhere in the distance, a frog croaked once. "When I was little, Mama said goats can see what people forget," Tari said softly. "That they carry messages from the places we don't understand. I thought it was just a tale. But now, I'm not so sure." Ngozi blinked again, then stretched her legs and curled back into herself, a soft grunt escaping her throat. Tari took it as permission. From that night forward, she began speaking to the goat whenever she was alone. At the stream, in the garden, during the long walks to collect firewood. She spoke of dreams, fears, memories, and the heavy silence that filled their home like smoke. Ngozi never answered in words, but her presence always felt like more than coincidence. She was there when Tari felt most lost, nudging her elbow, standing between her and Pajoro's sudden bursts of anger, or simply gazing at her with those unsettling silver eyes, as if memorizing the shape of her soul. What Tari didn't know, couldn't know, was that each word she poured into the silence was being carried somewhere. Through the shimmer in Ngozi's eyes, something ancient was listening. Something not quite animal. Not quite spirit. Something that had been waiting for a voice brave enough to speak, even if only to a goat. Pajoro emerged from the hut at dawn in a foul temper, eyes bloodshot, jaw chewing anger like tough yam. He kicked aside an empty basket and pointed at the brittle maize. "Look at that girl," he barked. "Stalks dying, chickens coughing. What curse did you drag here?" Tari straightened from the fire pit. Her lips parted, but no explanation could satisfy him. Drought, mites, none mattered to a man who needed blame. He stepped nearer, sour palm wine on his breath. "Lazy," he hissed, "and wild. Since your mother died you bring sorrow." Tari glanced at Ngozi grazing by the mango stump. The goat's silver eyes were calm amid the storm. Pajoro mistook stillness for defiance. He slammed a hoe against the coop, hens exploding into frantic clucks. "Even they fear your shadow," he shouted. A neighbor paused at the fence but moved on when Pajoro glared. Tari swallowed the ache. "I mend the coop, fetch water till the garden," she said. "I cannot summon rain." Words, he spat. Worthless as dust. He marched into the hut, returned with Tari's reed basket half filled with seed yams and appended it. "From today," he declared, voice echoing against mud walls, "you are no longer my child. The goat stays. You go." The sentence fell like a machete. He shoved a cracked gourd into her hands half full of tepid water, and looped her mother's broken necklace around her neck. "No coin to trade. Take your memories and leave before the sun climbs." Villagers watched from a distance. Exile was rare. Tari looked for an anchor and found none. Ngozi crossed the yard, pressing her forehead to Tari's hip as if pledging to follow. Pajoro snatched a rope, tied the goat to the stump. The animal strained, silver eyes flashing. "Stay, beast," he growled. "Your place is here." Tari brushed Ngozi's ear. "I'll come back," she whispered, though she did not know how. The goat bleated, a sound too heavy for an animal. Pajoro shoved Tari toward the road. Dust rose around her ankles. She did not look back. Each step felt numb and weightless. By noon she crossed the village boundary, walking the red track toward the shrinking river. The gourd knocked her hip, reminding her of thirst. Vultures circled in lazy spirals, but beneath the heat lay a restless hush, as if the land were inhaling. At dusk she reached a grove of baobabs. She drank sparingly, clutched the necklace, and watched the hills where bruised dark clouds climbed, lit by silent flickers. A cool, unfamiliar smell of wet earth drifted. Leaves trembled though no breeze touched them. Under the wide trunks she rested her back against rough bark that felt like ancient skin. Dreams surfaced unbidden, her mother laughing as they shelled groundnuts on the veranda, voice rising in a joke about stubborn goats. The soft thud of pestle against mortar as yam pounded into smooth paste. Lullabies that drifted with cooking smoke into the evening. These recollections hurt, yet they steadied her. Her mother had once said endurance was a rope woven from small memories, each strand a reason to keep walking. Tari fingered the necklace, feeling the break along the beads. She whispered a promise into the dusk that she would mend both necklace and life, stitch them together with whatever thread the journey offered. Lightning flickered again, closer this time, carving white rivers across the heavy sky. The baobab leaves hissed as sudden gusts pushed through the grove, scattering dry pods that rattled against the trunks. Tari rose, steadying the gourd. She sensed the world tilting, as though some great ear had finally heard her silent grief and chosen to answer with water. The air smelled sharp, metallic and alive. Far off, hyenas yelped, startled by the approaching roar. Somewhere between the clouds and the cracked earth, a covenant was forming, and Tari felt herself written into it, not as victim but as witness. She tightened her grip on the gourd, feeling the water shiver, as if it recognized its kin returning from the sky. Back in the village, Pajoro fought a lantern that refused to light. Ngozi stood rigid, rope-taut, staring at the same churning sky. When the first thunder cracked, the goat reared, snapped the rope and vanished into the darkness. Pajoro cursed and stumbled after her, but the night swallowed both man and oath. On the road, thunder rolled toward Tari like distant drums. Heavy drops pocked the dust, vanishing as fast as they formed. She lifted her face. Rain had not touched her since her mother's burial. Now it came with a force that felt chosen. She let it wash her cheeks. Somewhere ahead, the world waited to reshape itself. Behind her, something old and stubborn finally began to break. Tari moved beneath dripping boughs, each footfall sinking into leaf-soaked earth that smelled of rot and renewal. Rain had cooled the air, but her stomach pinched with hunger. She pushed aside ferns, listening for river song or bird call, yet the forest offered only a low, continuous hum, as though thousands of hidden throats were chanting one endless note. At first she thought it wind, then realized the branches hung still, the sound rose from roots and stone. She followed that vibration deeper. The canopy thickened, filtering light into green glass until midday looked like dusk. Vines brushed her shoulders. The hum broke into whispers mingling with rainwater falling from leaves. The syllables felt older than any language she knew, yet somehow familiar, like a lullaby remembered by the skin. Hours slipped by. Her saws bled where thorns pierced them. She was near collapse when she spotted a scar in the hillside, a cave framed by pillars of entwined rock. Orange firelight pulsed inside. Drawn by warmth, she stepped across the threshold. The walls glimmered with carvings, crops sprouting, women grinding grain, goats leaping under a harvest moon. Each figure seemed to breathe. The hum she had chased now throbbed through the stone, rattling in her ribs. She touched one carving and felt a pulse run up her arm. "You feel them, child?" From the shadows an old woman emerged, hair white as egret down, eyes bright with ember light. A cloak of stitched leaves rustled around her. "I am Mama Yule," she said as if greeting a guest long expected. "You have walked a sorrowful road to find me." Tari's knees shook. The woman handed her a horn cup of fragrant broth. Tari drank, tears burning her throat. "Why do the walls sing?" she whispered. "Because they remember," Mama Yule replied, pressing a palm to the stone. "Each groove is a root carrying story into earth. Sometimes the roots call to those who need them." Tari clutched her mother's broken necklace. "I was cast out," she said. "My stepfather kept his goat and sent me away." The old woman nodded. "Sometimes the ones thrown away grow roots deeper than those who stay." She beckoned Tari nearer the fire. "Your pain dug into the ground, The ground answered. Flames popped. Rain drummed softly outside. What will happen to me now? Tari asked. That depends on how you listen, Mama Yule said. She crushed a handful of leaves, releasing sharp scent. The forest speaks in many tongues: leaf, stone, feather, claw. Stay and I will teach you to hear. Tari remembered whispers in the branches, Ngozi's silver eyes, her mother's voice saying even the silent things have voices. Hope, fragile and green, unfurled inside her. I will stay, she said. Mama Yule's smile deepened. Then rest. We begin at dawn. She led Tari to a reed nest near the wall, beneath carvings of spiraling stars. Tari lay down, muscles unclenching. The cave hummed around her, telling stories without words. She closed her eyes. Before sleep claimed her, Mama Yule placed a cool stone in her palm. Feel its breath, she murmured. Stones remember rivers. Listen, and you will hear water even in silence. Tari curled her fingers. The stone beat softly, like a distant drum. Outside the rain eased, night insects clicked. Somewhere beyond the forest, the world she knew kept turning, but here, under ancient rock and watchful fire, a new life sprouted. She whispered thank you to the darkness and let the hum carry her into dreams where goats spoke and mothers sang with voices of wind. At first light she woke to the smell of river mint and the scrape of a broom. Mama Yule stood at the cave mouth sweeping rainwater channels into soil. Hear them greet the sun, she said. Tari listened and realized the drops were not random, they struck leaves in patterns. She copied the rhythm with her fingertips and the forest answered with a gust. They spent the morning gathering fallen seeds. Mama Yule showed her how to press each one to her ear. Some were silent, others buzzed like sleeping bees. These will sprout, the old woman said. Life announces itself if we choose to hear. By midday they rested beside a flat boulder warm from yesterday's sun. Mama Yule placed Tari's hand on it. The stone thrummed steady. Mountains sing songs, she said. Patience is the only language they trust. When hunger pricked, Mama Yule whistled. 2 squirrels bounded down with ripe kola nuts. Tari laughed and the squirrels did not flee. Animals trade gifts for respect, Mama Yule said. Soon you will ask without words and they will answer. That night, as fireflies stitched light across the cave mouth, Tari knew she was no longer lost but rooted where her future could grow. Back in the village, Pajoro woke before dawn to a strange stillness. The rope that usually tethered Ngozi beneath the mango stump lay limp in the dust, its frayed end flicking like a tongue at every breeze. He swore and kicked the empty feed basket, scattering dried cassava peels across the yard. Losing an ordinary goat would have hurt his pride. Losing this particular animal felt like misplacing a purse of gold. He stomped between huts, calling her name, threatening curses to anyone hiding her, but only roosters answered. For 7 days he hunted. He searched creeks, tick-infested thickets, even the shrine tree, though stepping close made his skin crawl as if the bark itself judged him. Each dawn he returned empty-handed, cursing the sky and Tari in equal measure. With every passing day his larder shrank and his temper grew. The yam pile he hoarded after casting the girl out was already soft with rot, and termites scaled the mud wall in a brown river, claiming what he could not finish alone. On the 8th morning he sat outside sharpening a machete, sweat carving muddy paths down his chest. A low bleat floated on the wind. His head jerked up. Another bleat answered, then another, forming a call-and-response chorus too deliberate to be chance. He shaded his eyes toward the village gate. Ngozi appeared first, trotting through red dust as if she owned the sunrise. Behind her marched a line of goats, black, brown, white, patched, more than Pajoro had seen together in his life. Their hooves raised a cloud that glittered like ash. Villagers stepped from doorways, mouths rounding in awe. Ngozi stopped at the compound threshold, silver eyes flashing. The herd fanned out. One fat nanny leapt onto the yam mound and chewed through the soft centers. Another yanked thatch from the roof, dragging it down in ragged sheets. A lean black buck trotted from the cooking hut with Pajoro's sandals clamped in its teeth like trophies. Pajoro lunged, swinging the machete. A dozen horn tips faced him. The goats did not scatter. They advanced a synchronized step. He backed away. Ngozi mounted the yam pile, hooves sinking into starch. She let out a single bleat, deep, resonant, almost human. Chickens fell silent and even the wind withdrew. Widow Sephu gasped. That goat carries a spirit, she whispered. The rumor sprinted through the gathering like fire in dry grass. Children repeated it in trembly voices. Market women hid smiles behind their wrappers. Inside the yard, every goat worked with eerie precision. They raided gourds, split them neatly to lap sour water, yet not a drop spilled. They pruned cassava leaves but left the stalks intact. One skinny kid kicked over the palm nut press, sending mash oozing across the dirt. All the while Ngozi watched, reflecting the scene like twin mirrors. Pajoro hurled the machete. The blade thudded into a post, missing Ngozi by a whisper. She did not flinch. Instead she lowered her head, scratched the earth and bleated again. A sharper note, slicing through his rage and opening something colder than fear. The machete handle sizzled where it stuck, smoke curling upward. Screams erupted from the crowd. No one stepped forward to aid him. Some believed the goat belonged to the shrine spirits now, others simply enjoyed the spectacle of a tyrant unraveling. A child asked where the girl Tari had gone. The grandmother answered, into the forest where the hurt grows strong. The goats finished as neatly as they began. Having stripped Pajoro's wealth, yams devoured, roof gutted, household trampled, they gathered at Ngozi's side. She turned once, fixing him with a gaze so bright it seared his memory. Then she marched toward the gate. The herd followed, vanishing into the trees as though swallowed by a door only they could see. Silence spilled over the compound. Roof spars jutted like snapped ribs, yam skins littered the yard. Pajoro dropped to his knees among them, hands shaking not from loss but from the echo of that curse-shaped bleat. Across the village, whispers thickened. The goat that spoke had passed sentence. The spirits had chosen their vessel. Some swore they would never again mock a motherless child. Others lit small fires at their thresholds, hoping the smoke would keep judgment at bay. And in every retelling Ngozi's silver eyes shone brighter, twin stars guarding a path no one yet understood. Tari stepped onto the red clay road leading to Azaba while festival drums bounced through the midday heat. A raffia arch welcomed traders and masked dancers, but every face turned toward her bright bark silk tunic and the mended quartz bead gleaming at her throat. Children hushed first. Pestles froze, gossip fluttered. The banished girl has returned, wearing river colors, smelling of distant rain. People parted without thinking, opening a path toward the shrine tree. From his broken compound Pajoro emerged, eyes wild from sleepless rage. He shouldered through the crowd and spat dust. Back to curse us? He barked. Your demon goat ruined me. Tari's voice was calm. I came to honor the festival and return balance to what was broken. A sharp bleat answered. Ngozi burst from behind Yam's stalls, silver eyes flashing. She galloped straight to Tari, then bent her knees so low her chin brushed the ground. Gasps rose like startled birds. Pajoro stabbed a finger. See? Witchcraft. Tari laid a hand on the goat's neck. She kneels to balance, not evil. A rustle of leaves announced Mama Yule, stepping from shrine shadow, staff in hand, white hair gleaming. Not witch, she declared, voice deep, daughter of the soil. Cast out, she learned the songs of roots and returns them now. Some villagers crossed themselves. Others nodded, remembering Pajoro's meanness. The man snatched for a stone, but Elder Benga blocked him. We will hear, the elder said. Clouds thickened above Tari alone, though the rest of the sky stayed blue. A wind smelling of wet leaves curled around ankles. One fat drop struck dust at her feet, then many, forming a curtain that stopped at an invisible line across the square. On one side, laughter and wonder, on the other, hot silence. Mama Yule lifted her staff. The sky heals receptive hearts. Tari produced a tiny pouch and spilled pale powder into the rain. Droplets brightened, grew sweet, and where they landed brittle grass turned green. A mother stepped forward, letting water kiss her feverish child. The boy giggled, color returning. Hope rippled outward, pots lifted to catch the gift. Pajoro sagged, mud creeping up his calves. She was only a goat, he muttered, confusion dulling anger. Tari approached, offering the quartz clasp from her necklace. Forgiveness is water, it needs space to flow. Help tend the soil and it will nourish you. He could not raise his eyes. Villagers guided him aside, not cruelly but firmly as wind guides fallen leaves. Curiosity bloomed. A potter presented a cracked jar. Tari traced its fracture. The rain sizzled along the line and sealed it smooth. Cheers broke like surf. Masked dancers lowered wooden faces and asked how the goat commanded a herd. Tari answered, animals feel what our pride ignores. When injustice grows heavy, even hooves will march. The priestess poured cola wine for Tari, who shared half with earth. Lightning stitched silent silver across the bruise-colored cloud, and in its flash Ngozi's coat shone like river stone. The goat turned toward the forest, shapes flickered, other goats waiting among shadows. Tari whispered thanks. Ngozi dipped her head, trotted away, and vanished into green twilight. Rain softened to mist, settling on skin like blessings. Drums found a slower rhythm and dancers pushed mud into spirals that would dry as new symbols. Torchlight bloomed at dusk, reflecting in puddles like scattered stars. Tari remained by the shrine tree while Mama Yule pressed a pouch of dawn bloom seeds into her palm, advice whispered for children yet unborn. Moonlight slid free of cloud, silvering even the scars on Pajoro's roofless hut. He limped forward and croaked, "Will the rain forgive me?" "Ask the ground," Tari replied. "Give it care and it may answer." He knelt in the mud. Elders joined, planting handfuls of grain where water pooled. The act spoke louder than any plea. She had walked for 3 dawns to reach this gate, sleeping beneath thorn acacias and drinking dew from broad leaves. Every stitch of the bark silk was woven by her own hands in Mama Yule's cave. Each thread whispered courage against her skin. The quartz clasp glowed as if storing moonlight and her mother's last lullaby. A flute fell silent when she passed. Markets paused mid-haggle. Children flirted with the rain line, shrieking when cool drops kissed their arms, then dashed back into sunshine. Their laughter braided hope with wonder, the village learning joy's forgotten language. A potter with a cracked jar approached. "If you carry harmony, mend this." Tari traced the fracture. Rain hissed and the clay sealed. The potter lifted the jar high, water magically pooled inside it, proof that the sky favored her return. Encouraged, a timid boy offered a wilted marigold, apologizing for mocking her exile. As the flower touched her palm, its petals straightened and brightened, and the boy's grin flashed white through mud-streaked cheeks. The shrine tree responded too, carvings caught rain, glimmering like wet ebony. Older villagers swore they heard the trunk sigh, relieved that covenant had been restored. Night approached behind the clouds and torches flared. As music resumed, Mama Yule whispered that balance was a dance, not a destination. Tari replied that she was ready to teach new steps. Together. Morning light crawled across Azaba Square, outlining every stone and puddle left by the strange rain. At the center, a half-circle of carved stools waited for the 7 elders, their surfaces dark from years of petitioners' tears. Villagers crowded in tight rows, curiosity and unease braided together. The shrine tree's wet bark glimmered behind them like mute testimony. Tari stood near the tree, bark silk clothes still damp, her mother's quartz pendant resting against her heart. Mama Yule leaned on her staff beside her. Ngozi paced near the edge of the crowd, silver eyes keeping silent watch. The elders took their seats, led by Elder Benga, whose beard reached the center of his chest. He lifted a gourd staff and tapped it 3 times against the stone to open the hearing. The crowd hushed. Goats bleated somewhere beyond the huts, but Ngozi merely twitched an ear. "Azaba must weigh truth," Benga said. "Words will pass like water through a sieve. Only what remains shall guide us." Pajoro shuffled forward, wrists bound with fiber rope. He glared at Tari, then at Ngozi, bitterness etched into every wrinkle. "Speak, girl," he snapped. "Tell them how you abandoned your duty and tried to steal my goat's spirit for witchcraft." Tari stepped into the clearing, hands clasped. Her voice was steady, neither loud nor timid. "I was cast out," she began, "with a cracked gourd of water and my mother's broken necklace. My stepfather told me I was no longer his child, and that the goat was worthy to stay. I wandered until the forest took me in." She did not embellish, did not mention hunger bleeding her dreams or the night thorns tore her feet. She described Mama Yule's cave, the teachings of leaf and stone, how listening brought her back stronger. Each sentence felt like water poured carefully into a bowl. No overflow, no spite, just the clean sound of truth filling space. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Widow Sephu wiped her eyes, remembering the day Tari trudged past with nothing but dust at her heels. A young potter muttered that he had once laughed at the girl. Shame heated his cheeks. Elder Benga turned to Pajoro. "You claim she used witchcraft. Present proof." Pajoro's nostrils flared. "The goat bewitched my land," he shouted. "She led a herd that stole my yams, tore my roof, ruined my life." "And who tied the goat and fed it yam meant for the child?" Elder Amadi asked, voice thin but sharp. "Who laughed when villagers mocked her?" Pajoro's gaze faltered. Ngozi chose that moment to step forward, hooves clicking against the damp stone. She stopped beside Tari and lifted her head toward the elders. The crowd leaned in as if expecting speech. Instead, Ngozi bleated, a low, resonant note. Pajoro flinched back. The goat bleated again, louder, the sound vibrating through ribs and teeth. On the third bleat the ground shuddered. Every eye darted toward Pajoro's distant hut. A sharp crack rang across the square. Dust plumed behind the huts as the earth split beneath Pajoro's dwelling. A corner of its mud wall sagged inward, roof spars bending like broken fingers. Villagers gasped. Some crossed themselves, others dropped to their knees. The crack widened no farther, just enough to mark a boundary, a scar drawn by something older than human judgment. Elder Benga rose. "The earth has spoken," he said solemnly. "But human justice must still answer." Elder Nyathi, keeper of records, unfurled a goatskin scroll. "Pajoro, you replaced a daughter with a beast, hoarded grain meant for both, and profited from her labor while claiming she was curse-ridden. By the laws of kin and harvest you have broken covenant." The council deliberated in low voices that only they could hear. Tari stood quietly, eyes on the cracked hut, not on the man. She felt a tremor of pity, but she did not let it soften the memory of hunger or her mother's voice urging strength. Finally Elder Benga lifted his staff. "We strip Pajoro of land and store. His fields will be tended by communal hands this season, their harvest going to orphans and widows. He will be named Man Without Shadow. From sundown he must leave Azaba, carrying nothing but a pilgrim's staff." The title cut deeper than exile. A man without shadow could claim no allegiance, share no hearth. His name would pass from conversation like ash in wind. Pajoro's shoulders crumpled. He tried to speak but found only dust on his tongue. Guards untied his wrists. There was nowhere to run. Villagers parted, not with anger but with the cool distance reserved for storms already past. Ngozi stepped beside Tari and nuzzled her hand. Something warm and small rolled across the back of Tari's fingers. A droplet, too heavy to be water, too bright to be dew, golden, translucent, shaped like a teardrop. The goat's silver eye shone softer now, as though the bead had carried away a weight. Tari cupped the gift. It pulsed once with gentle light, then cooled, solid gold flecked with a tiny spiral that resembled the shrine tree's carvings. Mama Yule's voice floated from behind. "The earth returns favor to those who listen." She pointed her staff toward the bead. "That is gratitude made visible, the spirit's way of saying the story is not done." Tari closed her fingers around the bead. Across the square, Pajoro trudged toward the north path, a basket of nothing on his back, villagers' eyes flickering away from the shadow he no longer possessed. Some pity mingled with their relief. Exile was as cruel as thirst. As the crowd dispersed, children approached Tari shyly, asking if the rain would come again. She touched the bead to each of their foreheads and promised that as long as they honored listening to wind, to leaf, to the quiet voices inside sorrow, the sky would never wholly forget them. Ngozi bleated softly, turning once in a slow circle as if sealing the vow. Then the goat bowed her head, pressing its warm forehead to Tari's palm. Overhead, a lone cloud shaped like an open hand drifted across blue, fingers trailing silver mist. The villagers watched it glide west, and none doubted any more that some stories wore hooves, some wore silence, and some wore the steadfast voice of a girl who refused to disappear. The council gathered again at dawn, this time not for judgment but for gratitude. Elder Benga announced that, in recognition of Tari's courage, the village would gift her Pajoro's former plot, fertile ground by the river bend, and build her a clay-walled house with a reed roof thick enough to hush the fiercest storms. The offer stirred murmurs of approval, a home and field were the highest tokens Azaba could bestow. Yet Tari bowed her head and surprised them all. She asked instead to restore the old stone well at the foot of the shrine tree, the one abandoned when drought first bit the land. People blinked, uncomprehending. Why choose a crumbling hole over fresh walls and clean soil? Tari answered simply that water, once shared, multiplies, and that forgiveness must flow from a place all could touch. Elder Benga nodded and the village agreed. Work began the same morning. Men hauled fallen stones from the cracked hut Pajoro had left behind, women mixed red clay with water drawn from the new spring beneath the mango tree, and children collected smooth pebbles to line the inner shaft. Tari traced the rim with the golden bead Ngozi had shed, pressing it into mortar where east met south so the dawn light would strike it first each day. Ngozi lingered beside her, ears flicking, occasionally nudging a stone as if approving the symmetry. No one questioned the goat's presence. She had become as natural to the work as the smell of wet clay. While masons fitted the last coping stones, Tari planted a ring of seedlings around the well mouth, fragrant basil to ease chest coughs, lemongrass to cool fevers, and creeping mint that would perfume every bucket raised. In the outer circle she set lily bulbs she'd gathered from the puddles where the first rain had fallen for her. She sang the seed song Mama Yule loved, low, circular notes that imitated river eddies, teaching roots to swirl through soil without breaking it. The goat listened, silver eyes half closed, swaying like grass. Some evenings elder women found themselves humming that melody as they cooked, having caught it on the wind. By the first moon's waxing, the well stood ready. Tari lowered a calabash and drew up water that glistened as if moonlit even under sun. She carried it to the hut of Widow Sephew, whose legs were swollen from long years pounding millet. Tari washed the widow's feet with the cool water, rubbed basil leaves over the skin, and bandaged them with soft cloth. The swelling eased before sunset, and Widow Sephew told anyone who would listen that the well's touch felt like a song sung inside her bones. Soon others came, a toddler with scorpion sting, a teenager burned at the forge, an old man shivering with fever. Tari never charged. She asked only that each healed person plant a seed by the well or place a pebble along its path. The garden widened, stone mosaics spiraled outward, and the place began to hum the way Mama Yule's cave once had. Ngozi became both guardian and herald. At dawn she walked the perimeter, nose to the ground as if inspecting the day's possibilities. When the first jar of porridge for the poor was set on the hearth, she bleated twice and smoke curled upward in the shape of twisting ribbons. Mothers noticed the goat's calm and began naming newborn daughters Ngozi, hoping to bind their children to a destiny of watchful kindness. By season's end 3 baby girls bore the name. During the naming rites, Ngozi approached each child, touching her cool nose to tiny brows as though sealing a covenant. One afternoon Tari ladled soup for orphans gathered under the shrine tree. She glanced at the well and felt a sudden hush fold over the square. Wind stilled, the garden's leaves settled, and even the goats browsing nearby lifted their heads. A shimmering figure stepped from the dappled shade of the tree, her mother, wrapped in the same patterned cloth she once wore when shelling groundnuts on lazy evenings. The apparition's feet stirred no dust, yet her eyes filled with the same warmth Tari remembered from lullabies. Tari set down the pot. "Mama," she breathed, tears blurring the world into watercolors. Her mother's voice floated across the hush, softer than wind sliding through reeds. "You did not seek revenge, my daughter. You brought return." The syllables fluttered like wings. Tari tried to step forward, but her mother raised a gentle hand, stopping her at the edge of the shade. The spirit's smile carried both pride and farewell. "Tend the well, plant forgiveness. Water remembers kindness longer than stone remembers anger." Then the figure dissolved, scattering into motes that drifted upward and vanished among the tree's carved offerings. Tari knelt, pressing her palms into damp earth, letting grief and joy mingle until they were indistinguishable. Ngozi patted close and licked her cheek, the gesture neither animal nor entirely human. When Tari rose, resolve anchored her spine. She fetched a fresh bucket and set it beside the garden, where anyone might drink without ask or answer. Months slipped by, marked not by drought's misery but by harvest dances and quiet healings. Merchants passing through Azaba paused for water and carried tales of a silver-eyed goat and a girl who taught wells to sing. Some laughed, calling it village myth, but those who tasted the water felt their burdens lighten, and doubt dried in their throats before reaching their lips. By the next rainy season the herb ring had doubled, lilies opening like white lanterns each dawn. Every blossom held a single bead of gold at its center, tiny echoes of Ngozi's tear. Tari collected them in a clay jar, saving them for the day the village might need another reminder that forgiveness is the deeper well, and that what we choose to plant around it determines the taste of every future rain. Festival banners went up at dawn, dyed raffia fluttering over Azaba's road. Women draped calico from doorposts, children painted cheeks with white clay, and drummers loosened talking drum skins so rhythm could ride the wind. A sign at the shrine tree read, "The day the goat danced, food, stories, peace." The idea began as a child's whisper, spreading when Widow Sephew noted that herbs bowed whenever Ngozi passed. Elder Benga approved, and by sunrise every household pledged something: maize, pepper, fish, shade. Tari watched, feeling the village hum like a second heartbeat. First came masks. Clay was shaped into goat faces, baked, painted with charcoal stripes and hibiscus dots. Boys butted heads while girls practiced nimble steps, copying Ngozi's grace. At midday hearths roared. Mortar beats echoed as women pounded yam. Tari stirred basil into the stew, smoked tilapia and palm oil followed. No one would leave hungry. Under canopies elders traded tales. Nyathi told how the first goat tricked a hyena. Amati spoke of a girl who netted thunder. Flutes threaded the pauses, palm fronds answering. Earlier, 5 boys dragged a hollow log from the river to make a thunder drum. Grandmother Chitsi tied rain ribbons to its pegs. Toddlers scattered petals inside. The yard smelled of pepper smoke so rich passers-by licked the air. Elder women tested stew on their wrists, steam rose, curling into a goat before vanishing. Teenagers poured cola wine. After each story, children drummed 3 heartbeats on the soil, promising to remember. Near sunset silence fell. Ngozi entered the clearing, coat silver in slant light. She spiraled toward the shrine tree, performing the ancient rain dance, then bowed. Petals drifted onto her back. Masks followed, drummers found a heartbeat, and soon the square moved as one. Tari lingered by the well, tears pricking. Joy had grown from broken things. Her mother's necklace, Pajoro's greed, cracked earth. Elder Benga raised his staff. Azaba needs a keeper of harmony, he said, turning to Tari. Will you serve as youngest elder? Cheers surged. She knelt. Indigo cloth settled on her shoulders. Ngozi nuzzled her hand. Benga poured well water over Tari's hands. Nyathi set 4 cowries on her palms. Midwife Amina braided river grass into her hair. Each gesture felt foretold. Youth lifted Tari on a litter and carried her past every doorway. Some tapped her heels for luck, others tucked seeds into her sash. She promised to plant hope beside the well. The thunder drum boomed, answered by smaller drums, a layered rhythm the hills echoed. Women ululated, echoes returned twice as if ridges sang too. When the procession ended, Tari stepped beside Ngozi. The goat reared playfully, children squealed. Tari laughed and scratched her ear. Night drew its curtain. Torches flared, stars pricked velvet. People shared stew and nuts, children chased sparks. Tari stood with Mama Yule. The old woman squeezed her arm. Tari sang the river-round song. The tune spiraled through torches, wrapping the shrine tree. Voices joined, children bright, mothers warm, fathers deep, elders trembling, until sound became a river carrying every heart. Constellations shifted into a dancing goat shape. Laughter rose. Ngozi trotted a final circle, lay at Tari's feet, and exhaled a musical breath. Across the valley Pajoro sat alone, watching smoke rise. Hunger gnawed, yet the scent of yam on the wind stirred regret more than envy. He whispered Tari's name, hoping forgiveness could travel where he could not. Back in the square the thunder drums stood at the well. Each villager struck once. The sound tunneled downward and returned as a soft splash, fanning cool air across warm faces. Mama Yule chalked a circle. Not a wall, a door, she said. Footprints glowed then faded as villagers crossed. Ngozi pawed a spot for a memory stone. Children painted bright spirals, vowing to add another each year so the past would guide tomorrow. Music softened, couples swayed, boys stumbled laughing, elders clapped. Tari moved among them with well water, backs straightened, worries eased. Sleeping mats were unrolled for drowsy children, masks hung from shrine branches, stars thickened until the sky itself seemed to dance. Tari breathed palm smoke and quiet goat breaths, knowing the moment was seed and promise in one. Elder Benga tapped his staff. Carry tonight gently, he said, and families gathered their bundles. The last flute note rose to meet dawn's first line. Tari stayed by the well. We did well, she murmured. Ngozi's soft bleat answered. The golden amulet flared, a vow that forgiveness, once kindled, would keep its own watch. Before leaving, each family filled a calabash, dabbing a drop on foreheads and door lintels. Younger children traced the chalk circle again, giggling when their toes glowed. A girl newly named Ngozi planted a basil sprig by the memory stone, whispering, "Grow taller than me." The sprig shimmered, uncurling a new leaf in moonlight later. Tari sat on the low stone wall that bordered the herb beds, her knees pulled close and her fingers gently crumbling a basil leaf so its scent drifted across afternoon. Cicadas buzzed beyond the tamarind grove, and bees stitched gold paths among lilies that now circled the well in 3 rings. The season of first harvest had arrived, and the garden shimmered with gratitude. Yam vines thick at the roots, okra pods reaching skyward, cassava leaves broad as open palms. Children splashed by the spring, daring each other to stand beneath its chill trickle. One of those children, a slender girl with coal-black plaits and a goat mask necklace, paused at Tari's side. Her name was Adiz Ngozi, though everyone called her Ziz. She studied Tari's quiet smile, then lowered herself onto the warm stones. "Grandmother, the older boys told me something on the hill," she said, voice small but bold. "They said you were once replaced by a goat and that the goat became magic. Is that true?" Tari's laugh escaped like wind-catching chimes. She placed the basil leaf in Z's palm. "It's true, but it isn't the whole truth. I wasn't replaced by a goat. I was given a messenger, and the village was given a lesson. Ziz tilted her head, eyes bright with questions. Was the messenger lonely? For a time, Tari said. Messengers wait for someone willing to listen. She rose, gesturing for Ziz to follow. They walked to the well, stone path warm beneath bare feet. Sunlight made the golden bead in the rim flash like lightning caught in clay. Tari filled a small gourd and balanced it on Z's head. Spread your feet, bend your knees a breath, lift your chest. The water must feel welcome, not trapped. Ziz inhaled, adjusting until the gourd steadied. I feel it moving. Listen, Tari said. When it sloshes loudly your stride is uneven. Soften your steps and the song quiets. They paced in slow loops and soon the gourd hummed instead of splashed. Birds traded notes above and the wind turned. Z's eyes widened. It's singing back. That's because you listened first, Tari told her. Everything sings back to listening. At the shrine tree, Tari touched one groove shaped like a spiral. This is forgiveness, she said. A road that circles back but never repeats. Ziz traced the spiral with cautious finger. How do you forgive someone who hurts you? You remember but release the binding, Tari replied. Memory teaches, bitterness blocks. Every hurt is a seed. Planted in anger, thorns rise. Planted in understanding, lilies grow. She pointed to the blossoms nodding near the tree. Those were born from a broken pot. Another gust carried the dusty scent of hills. What is the wind saying now? Ziz asked. It says rain is walking this way slowly so the soil can prepare, Tari answered. And it says someone watches. They turned toward the treeling. There, under shade, stood an aging goat. Her coat had dulled to pewter, yet her eyes still shimmered silver. She did not step forward. She simply observed, steady as legend. Z's breath caught. Is that the messenger? Tari nodded, affection swelling. She guards from afar now, but she is never gone. She lifted her hand. Ngozi flicked her ears, dipped her head, then vanished between trunks. Evening approached. Tari and Ziz returned the water, letting the last sip pour onto the lilies. Villagers gathered for meal. Youths pounding millet, elders stirring stew, babies strapped to backs swaying with the rhythm. The thunder drum waited, its ribbons faded but still bright enough. Elder Benga approached, leaning on his carved staff. Keeper, he greeted Tari. Will you lead tonight's song? With pleasure. She guided Ziz to the circle's center. The child set the gourd down carefully, shoulders proud. Drummers slapped the first heartbeat. Bap bitch, recalling hooves on packed earth. Flutes echoed goat calls. Tari lifted her hands and the village fell silent. She began Mama Yule's river round, soft as water curling around stones. The melody rose, rolling from her chest like dawn fog over a quiet lake. Voices joined, high, low, cracked, young, forming a tide that washed over dusk. Stars blinked awake, each note a spark aligning constellations into new stories. Ziz sang too, surprising herself. The gourd vibrated, surface rippling though no hand touched it. In distant branches Ngozi chuffed, approving harmony. When the song faded, Tari knelt so her words would travel straight into Z's listening heart. Carry this beyond today. There will be times the world asks you to bow until you disappear. Stand gently instead. Let your listening be louder than their shouting. Ziz nodded. I will remember. Torches lit, laughter flew. Clouds massed overhead, violet upon indigo, and a hush spread. The first raindrop struck Tari's open palm, another kissed Z's brow. People looked up, grins widening. Rain began, a patient, nourishing drizzle like a long-promised friend. Rain drummed on rooftops, pooled in the grooves children had traced at last year's festival, and gathered in cupped banana leaves like lanterns. Women tilted cooking pots to capture more, sure stew infused with first rain tasted twice as sweet. Men stacked firewood under eaves but paused, palms up, letting coolness soak the calluses of labor. Elder Benga raised his face, water stringing through his beard, and proclaimed the season blessed before a word of planting had been spoken. Ziz spun beneath the torrent until skirts clung to her legs and droplets streaked her cheeks like silver paint. She stopped only when Tari's arms encircled her. Together they stood, breath mingling with rain-scented night, listening to puddles form choruses at their feet. Somewhere drums resumed, slower now, echoing heartbeats ready to rest after anticipation. Will the messenger stay for always? Ziz asked. As long as someone remembers to listen, Tari said, squeezing the girl's hand, she will never wander far. Tari faced the breeze and whispered so softly only the wind could claim the words. Sometimes the one cast out becomes the one who opens the gates of rain.